The Tempest, for iHearShakespeare. Written and performed in 1611, Shakespeare's The Tempest remains one of the playwright's most frequently produced plays. It is also regarded as the last play attributed solely to Shakespeare's authorship, since the plays after 1611 are generally believed to be collaborative efforts. Essentially plotless, The Tempest focuses primarily on Prospero, whose dukedom has been usurped by his brother Antonio. With his daughter Miranda, Prospero now lives on an island in the New World as ruler where the promise of a better life exists. On the one hand, we may see Prospero as the victim of his brother's greed for power. On the other hand, we may see Prospero as more interested in scholarly and magical learning than in ruling, since there is no evidence that he protested or resisted Antonio's ambition. Yet the play begins with a group of royals who are on a ship in the midst of a great storm issued by Prospero and executed by his ferry servant Ariel. It would seem that Prospero has drawn their ship to his island and, to make the journey more fantastical, has given them a scary ride, but with no casualties. During the course of the play, Prospero will demonstrate his command over airy, earthy, and watery elements, as well as his ability to forgive and set free. Prospero proves himself a knowledgeable and transcendental being, but for all his power, he is neither entirely likable nor compassionate, and by play's end, he seems resigned and even sad. We catch a glimpse of his warmth in Act 4 when Prospero gives his daughter to Ferdinand. Ultimately, he breaks his staff and drowns his book, and so abandons that which made him ruler of the New World in exchange for a simple life in Milan where every third thought shall be my grave. All the magic in all the world is no longer what is needed or sought for Prospero. He is, it would seem, satisfied, if somewhat exhausted. Indeed, even his reconciliation with Antonio is of his own doing and for his own peace of mind. In the end, perhaps we are encouraged to relinquish the desire for power, free ourselves from destructive relationships, and let things be so that death is no longer the only thing that releases us from worldly cares, but something that we can accomplish while still living. Toward the close of the play, it is Gonzalo, the same character who remained calm during the storm at the beginning of the play, who encourages us to remember the maxim, "Know thyself," in what may be considered a sort of roundabout way, when he says that Ferdinand found a wife where he himself was lost, Prospero his dukedom in a poor isle, and all of us ourselves when no man was his own. And now let's begin with Act 1, Scene 1 of The Tempest, for iHearShakespeare. Act 1, Scene 1 depicts men on a ship in the midst of a terrible storm at sea. The ship carries King Alonso, his brother Sebastian, the usurping Duke of Milan, Antonio, the old counselor Gonzalo, the son of King Alonso Ferdinand, and other royal attendants. While Antonio argues with the bosun, the others are alerted to descend to the lower deck and pray. Scene 2 introduces us to Prospero and his daughter Miranda. Miranda worries that the storm that just occurred claimed the lives of the people on the ship. Prospero assures her that no harm was done, and then proceeds to tell her how they arrived on the island. He recounts how his brother Antonio, assisted by King Alonso, stole his dukedom and set him and Miranda, who was 2 years old at the time, upon a rotting boat adrift in the sea. It was Gonzalo who supplied Prospero with books and other provisions that made it possible to sustain them wherever they might land. Prospero lastly explains the reason for raising the storm being that all of his enemies have boarded a single ship, and so he brought that ship to him. Then, by use of his magic, or art as it is called, he puts Miranda to sleep and calls forth Ariel, an airy spirit. Ariel explains that he did Prospero's bidding by creating the tempest that scared all of the passengers aboard the ship almost to their deaths, but that not a hair perished, and on their garments not a blemish. Ariel further explains that he dispersed the royal passengers and attendants at various places on the island, taking particular care, as Prospero instructed, with the king's son, Ferdinand. As for most of the crew and other innocent people, Ariel conveys that they are upon the Mediterranean float bound sadly home for Naples, supposing that they saw the king's ship wrecked and his great person perish. Prospero commends Ariel's work, but insists that there is more work to be done. When Ariel complains about being ordered around, Prospero reminds him of how he was imprisoned by the foul witch Sycorax in a cloven pine, where he remained for 12 years until freed by Prospero's magic. Prospero speaks of Sycorax's son, Caliban, who is not honored with a human shape, whom Prospero keeps in service as a base creature who does his bidding. Thus, we see the command and personification of Prospero's magic, ranging from the earthly in the figure of Caliban and the airy in the form of Ariel. Prospero warns Ariel not to complain again, or he'll cast Ariel into an oak till he has howled away 12 winters. After promising to set Ariel free in 2 days, Prospero next orders Ariel to change himself into a sea nymph and be invisible to all except Prospero. Ariel exits and Prospero wakes Miranda. They go to see Caliban, and Ariel reappears, now transformed into a sea nymph. Prospero whispers something into Ariel's ear, and he is off again. Caliban appears and complains that Prospero treats him badly, and that the island belongs to him by his mother, Sycorax. Prospero retorts, stating that he educated Caliban, treated him humanely, and taught him the English language until Caliban tried to rape Miranda. Caliban replies that he learned Prospero's language and is now able to curse. Prospero sends Caliban to fetch wood as Ferdinand is led to them by the invisible Ariel, who is playing an instrument and singing a song. Miranda is, of course, enamored of Ferdinand, and Ferdinand returns the feeling. In an aside, Prospero explains that he must not let the wooing be made too easy, and so interrupts their conversation, accusing Ferdinand of being a spy who is attempting to take over the island. Prospero provokes Ferdinand to draw his sword, but Prospero uses magic to keep Ferdinand from being able to move. Miranda protests her father's actions and words. Prospero refuses to be commanded by his daughter, and further explains that Ferdinand is to be kept prisoner. Miranda assures Ferdinand that her father is of a gentler nature, but still she is saddened by the situation. In asides, Prospero makes it clear that this is all an act and going exactly the way he wishes. Here concludes Act 1 of The Tempest, for I Hear Shakespeare. Act 2, Scene 1 takes us to Sebastian, Antonio, Francisco, Adrian, and the gentle Gonzalo, who is attempting to comfort King Alonso about their predicament, only to be teased by the other younger men. During their conversation, we learned that the royal party was on its way home to England from celebrating the marriage of Ferdinand's sister, Claribel, who is married in Tunis. Sebastian directly blames Alonso, whom he begged not to consent to marrying his daughter to the king of Tunis. The men also take note of their garments, which appear fresh and as handsome as they were when they were first in Tunis. This, of course, is due to Ariel's great care with them during the earlier Tempest. Sebastian adds that Alonso's son, Ferdinand, would still be alive if they had not taken the voyage. Gonzalo tries to change the subject by describing what he would do with the island they are on if it belonged to him. Invisible to the men, Ariel enters and puts everyone to sleep except Antonio and Sebastian. Feeling quite awake and rather excited, Antonio begins to plant the idea that Sebastian should be king by slaying his brother, the sleeping Alonso, while he, Sebastian, executes Gonzalo. They draw their swords and are about to slay the sleeping men when Ariel enters, invisible, and awakens Gonzalo, who cries out, "Now, good angels, preserve the king." Grasping for an excuse as to why their swords are drawn, Sebastian and Antonio claim that they heard wild animals nearby. Alonso agrees to leave the area to be away from the beasts while looking for his son, Ferdinand. Gonzalo gives further assurance that Ferdinand must be alive, and Ariel explains that he will inform Prospero of what has happened and provide safe passage for Alonso to seek out Ferdinand. Scene 2 finds Caliban carrying wood and complaining about his predicament, exacerbated by Prospero's various painful punishments. Caliban hears someone coming and, assuming that it must be Prospero, falls to the ground in hopes that he will be left alone. It turns out that it's not Prospero, but King Alonso's court jester, Trinculo, who is approaching. Trinculo cannot deduce what sort of creature Caliban is, but concludes that if he could bring such a creature back to England, he could make money by putting it on display. A clap of thunder is heard, and Trinculo scurries into the same hiding spot as Caliban occupies as Stephano enters, singing a song and clearly drunk. Just as Trinculo couldn't identify Caliban, Stephano cannot identify the two pair of legs that protrude from under the gabardine. Stephano also has the same fantasy of bringing the creature back to England to put on display to make money, and so gives Caliban wine to drink in the hopes of taming him. Stephano hears a second voice come from under the gabardine and deduces that it is one creature with 4 legs and 2 heads. Eventually, the two men figure out who the other is, and they rejoice at their reunion. Concluding that these two men must be gods because of the power of the wine, Caliban swears to serve them as they see fit, and so agrees to show them about the island. Stephano and Trinculo promise to give Caliban more wine, and Caliban sings a song bidding farewell to the rule and domination of Prospero. Here concludes Act 2 of The Tempest, for I Hear Shakespeare. Act 3, Scene 1 takes us to Ferdinand, who is moving logs as commanded by Prospero. Ferdinand reflects that, while the labor is difficult, it is also refreshing when he thinks upon Miranda. Miranda enters to speak with Ferdinand, both of whom are watched by Prospero from afar. During their conversation, we hear Ferdinand speak of Miranda's beauty, and Miranda admit to Ferdinand that, while she has not seen other men before, she would not wish any companion in the world but you. Ferdinand and Miranda admit their love to each other and promise to marry one another and then exit. Prospero enters and states that he cannot be happy about their intended union just yet, as he has much business to perform. Scene 2 takes us back to Stephano, Trinculo, and Caliban. Caliban asks Stephano to punish Trinculo for mocking him. Then, Caliban repeats his request to overthrow Prospero, who has cheated him out of the island. Ariel, visible only to Caliban, appears and calls Caliban a liar. Caliban explains that Stephano should steal Prospero's books and claim Miranda. Ariel interjects commentary every now and again, which Caliban responds to, which confuses Stephano and Trinculo. Ariel lures the men away by playing music. Scene 3 shows the weary group including Alonso, Sebastian, Antonio, Adrian, Francisco, and Gonzalo. Gonzalo complains that he is tired from walking around and must stop to rest. In asides, Antonio and Sebastian restate their plot to kill Alonso and Gonzalo. Suddenly, several strange shapes enter, bringing a banquet all created by Prospero's magic. The men are about to enjoy the food set before them when Ariel appears, dressed as a harpy, which is a sort of half-eagle, half-woman creature which would snatch things away, and makes the entire banquet vanish. Ariel next accuses the men of their crimes, which include Antonio, who usurped his brother Prospero's dukedom; Alonso, who benefited from Antonio's actions since he, Alonso, receives a yearly tribute; and Sebastian, Alonso's brother, who is still trying to find the opportunity to kill Alonso. Ariel explains that they will be lost on the island forever if they do not repent and quit their evil positions and intentions. Without being seen by the men, Prospero appears and commends Ariel for performing his part so well. Alonso exits to find his son. Sebastian and Antonio intend to fight the voice that just accused them, and Gonzalo follows after to make sure none of them become so desperate that they do anything to harm anyone or even themselves. Here concludes Act 3 of The Tempest, for I Hear Shakespeare. Act 4, Scene 1 brings our focus to Prospero, who is giving his daughter, Miranda, freely to Ferdinand. Prospero calls for Ariel and explains that he wants Ariel and other spirits of the island to provide an entertainment for Miranda and Ferdinand to celebrate their betrothal. Several spirits return, impersonating some gods and goddesses from Greek mythology, including Iris, Ceres, and Juno in the form of a mask. Iris first enters and invites Ceres to witness a contract of true love. Ceres agrees on the condition that Venus and her son Cupid do not attend. Juno enters and blesses the union of Ferdinand and Miranda with the help of Ceres. Some reapers and nymphs next enter to perform a dance. Abruptly, Prospero remembers that Caliban, along with Stefano and Trinculo, intend to seek and kill him, and so Prospero ends the entertainment saying, "Our revels now are ended. These our actors, as I foretold you, were all spirits, and are melted into air, into thin air." He continues later in the monologue sharing, "We are such stuff as dreams are made on, and our little life is rounded with a sleep." Ferdinand and Miranda excuse themselves, and Prospero calls for Ariel with a thought. Ariel appears and explains that Stefano, Trinculo, and Caliban have been walking through toothed briars, sharp furzes, pricking goss and thorns. Pleased, Prospero calls for Ariel to remain invisible and go and bring his ornamental robes, his trumpery, to him in order to lay a trap. Prospero and Ariel next are invisible as Trinculo, Stefano, and Caliban enter. Trinculo and Stefano are irritated because Caliban lost their bottle of wine in a pool. They see the richly decorated clothes hanging and start squabbling over who gets which gown. Caliban reprimands the two men for getting sidetracked by clothes, insisting that they must kill Prospero first or all is lost. Trinculo and Stefano begin piling clothes onto Caliban as Prospero and Ariel appear, calling forth spirits to drive the perpetrators away. As punishment for the three men, Prospero commands goblins to grind their joints with dry convulsions, shorten up their sinews with aged cramps, and more pinch-spotted make them than pard or catamountain. Prospero concludes the scene telling Ariel, "Shortly shall all my labors end, and thou shalt have the air at freedom. For a little follow, and do me service." Here concludes Act 4 of The Tempest, for I Hear Shakespeare. Act 5, Scene 1 opens with Prospero explaining that his project is coming to a close. Ariel reports that King Alonso and his followers are confined as prisoners and out of their minds, just as Prospero placed them. Prospero explains that he does not wish to be cruel and will release them, giving further assurance, saying, "My charms I'll break, their senses I'll restore, and they shall be themselves." Prospero sends Ariel to fetch them and then traces a magic circle with his staff. In soliloquy, Prospero reflects on what he's been able to do with his so potent art learned from his books and his staff, but resolves to give up his power and says, "I'll break my staff, bury it certain fathoms in the earth, and deeper than did ever plummet sound I'll drown my book." Solemn music plays as Alonso, Gonzalo, Sebastian, Antonio, Adrian, and Francisco are led on by Ariel. One by one, Prospero restores their senses and, after reviewing their wrongdoings, forgives them. Prospero calls for his hat and rapier and changes his clothes to that which he would wear as Duke of Milan. Prospero sends Ariel to bring the master and the bosun to him. Gonzalo next cries out, "Some heavenly power guide us out of this fearful country," and Prospero reveals himself as the wronged Duke of Milan. As the two men embrace, Alonso steps forward and resigns the suzerainty of the Dukedom of Milan. Prospero next addresses Sebastian and Antonio, the latter of whom he forgives for usurping the dukedom. Alonso and Prospero next engage in a bittersweet conversation about what it means to lose a child. Alonso speaks of the loss of his son, Ferdinand, whom he has yet to find, while Prospero speaks of losing Miranda due to the latest Tempest. Of course, Prospero means that he lost Miranda to Ferdinand. Prospero next reveals Ferdinand and Miranda playing at chess. Upon the reunion of father and son, Miranda exclaims, "Oh wonder, how many goodly creatures are there here, how beauteous mankind is. Oh brave new world that has such people in it." Ferdinand asks for his father's consent of the union of himself and Miranda. Alonso gives it heartily. Ariel next appears, bringing the master and the bosun, who report that their ship is safely anchored just offshore and in perfect condition. Prospero next sends Ariel to bring on Caliban, Stefano, and Trinculo, still wearing their stolen apparel. Stefano and Trinculo are reprimanded by Alonso and sent away, but not before Prospero identifies Caliban as a thing of darkness belonging to him. Prospero invites Alonso and the others back to his cell, where he will recount his days on the island for their entertainment. He next asks Ariel to provide calm seas and good wind for the next day's travel, and then, as he has promised, Prospero sets Ariel free, stating, "My Ariel chick, that is thy charge. Then to the elements be free, and fare thou well." The play concludes with Prospero speaking an epilogue in which he asks the audience, through their applause, release him whose only project was to please. Here concludes Act 5 of The Tempest for I Hear Shakespeare.